Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the person who it dawns on her that mankind is kind of lousy.
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Dawn of Mankind. Now if you're curious about our opinions, check out our other video, Rolling with Reviews, Dawn of Mankind. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. In Dawn of Mankind, you move your clan members along the path of life, doing various activities before growing old and dying. Other clans may either get in your way or end up helping you along the way. You earn points for a variety of things, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. All right, Will, so how does the game change for two players?
So for two players, there is no bot.
Nope.
So goodbye, Nanaman. And then for the progress cards, it's going to be based on the number of players minus one. Mm-hmm. So and you'll have 5 different ones. So for a 2-player game, you'll have 5 individual progress cards.
Technology
cards.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yep.
That's it.
That is all.
That changes.
Issues at a 2-player account is, well, it feels really noticeable that there's only 1 technology card. So, 5 unique technology cards. And there are up to 3 study tiles on the board, depending on the
Which
random
we played with and found that we got all the technology cards before we even rested for the first time in the game,
right,
which was really early on.
Yes, and then that means those paths become useless because you don't want to waste your time going to a tile that you get no benefit from. You can move through them, but there's no point, especially when the horizontal paths generally give you the same thing. So the horizontal path that has the study tiles, well, the last 3 are, if you're playing with all of them, are 3 study tiles in a row. So you're really wasting putting your people through that path.
Yeah, especially with some of the study tiles, like the far ends, will actually cost you just to move into them.
Exactly. So that was not really well balanced.
No. Plus, with 2 players, one of the key features of the game is if you're on an action space and someone wants to move in, they'll knock you off and move you on, so you have this player interaction.
Right.
There's less of that bumping going on in a 2-player game because, well, it's only 2 players with their family tribes.
Which means you'll have to rest more frequently, because resting means moving all your people off of the tiles and doing a few other cleanup things. So that is kind of a problem. I think those are the main problems, and unfortunately, it doesn't really do anything well at 2 players.
Right.
So that's that. On to accessibility. Okay, the resource tracks on the player boards have poor contrast between with the icon, because there's the icon and then there's an outline number, and it's just really poor contrast. And then some of the circles are white and some of them are brown, and that's to indicate spoilage, because certain resources will spoil when you rest.
Meat and fruit.
Right.
So meat goes all the way down to you can only hold 3 after a rest, and fruit you can only hold 6 after a rest.
Correct.
The instruction says, well, it's just like your mat says. And Sarah's looking down, it's like, my mat says nothing. And I'm like, well, what's different? And it took a while before she looked. It's like, it's the background color, because there's a lot going on every single space.
Yeah, so it's just not really good. And the other problem with the player sheet is your reference information is on the back of the player sheet. The problem is once you start the game, you're tracking your resources on the front, so you're not going to want to flip that over. So unless you're playing fewer players,
the max.
Yeah, you're not going to have an actual reference card, which can be a problem, especially when you're learning the game.
Yeah.
Especially because the rules are a poster sheet, which is like I don't like trifold rules, but this is a giant poster that you've got to unfold, and you've got it front and back, and that's just really, it's really horrendous.
I was like, well, Sarah, what's the answer? She's behind this giant poster. Like, I don't know. Let me see here.
Like, am I trying to navigate to the next place? Because I'm like, it's like holding a map.
Yeah.
The board itself can be very tedious to set up because each tile goes in a very specific spot. And there are 5 columns, and I think there's, 4 or 4 or 5, I can't remember. So each one is uniquely shaped, so it's not like you're not going to be able to figure it out, but it's just still tedious. Like, okay, this piece goes here, but now I have to randomize whether it's front or back. So
it's almost like you have to do a puzzle before you get to play the game.
Right, exactly. The meeples are really small. Granted, I can see why they did, because if you play 5 players, you're going to have a lot of pieces all over the board.
Yeah, so you need them small.
But they are kind of small to deal with. Also, the resources are small, but again, the sheet and tracks are small. The dark blue tiles have poor contrast with black text. It's just they did a color variance between the tiles so you know which went into which column, which is great. Just by the time you get to dark blue, they should have changed it to white text, not kept it black text. And lastly, the flow lines on the main board are just kind of confusing. It's not the most straightforward flow chart I've ever seen. So it just took a little bit, and sometimes it feels like there's extraneous lines. It's very busy.
Yeah, especially when I was asking Sarah, I was like, well, what does that lead to? And she's like, hold on. Okay, it leads to this, this, this. I was like, wait, what was the second one? Of what? of the second action you told me. Hold on.
Yeah,
okay.
It kind of made things go a little slowly between us, especially since he can't see the board at all. So
right.
It was an accessibility issue exacerbated by the fact that he can't see the board, and I'm having a terrible time trying to figure out the board to tell him.
Yes.
That's kind of everything that it doesn't do very well.
Okay.
What it does right, I mean, they did a fairly decent job on the color of the meeples. Black, white, brown, yellow, and green. They're pretty distinct from each other. The downside is they can kind of get lost on the board because the board is kind of dark and busy and not great graphic design. So it's kind of a mixed bag there.
Mm-hmm.
The text is readable on most of the cards, and then the lighter colored tiles, you're not going to have too much problems there. The tiles are all referenced in the rule sheet, but it's just you kind of wish they were a little more easy to understand just at a glance.
Well, you want to do as little with the rule sheet as possible since it's a poster.
Right, exactly.
They're there,
yeah,
but you don't want to mess with it.
Agreed.
Because folding a map is tough.
Yeah.
And posters, no.
Right. In the end, everything is open information about the game. It's just if you have people at the table with more severe vision issues, then you're relying on those who can see and hopefully can figure things out. Mm-hmm. All right, conclusion.
For 2 players, would you recommend?
Not optimal. I really, and not without house rule changes to make it so that there's at least 2 copies of every technology, and you've really got to actually not choose to play with all 3 study tiles.
Yeah.
You need some major shifting.
Yeah, 2 players, it doesn't feel balanced properly. There's certain parts of the game that just fall flat, and then you then have to deal with the rest of the game with that handicap. It's like playing with part of game now.
Yeah.
And that's how you're supposed to finish it? It's weird.
Yeah.
So 2 players, no, don't really recommend. Accessibility.
I say it's decent, but not great. So it's really going to depend on your vision.
I think you got muted colors.
Yeah.
Being the blendy part of it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem is more just the low contrast and busy, not clean graphic design.
Right. Especially for like tracking your resources.
Yeah.
Just figuring that out. So fortunately, we gave you some clues that if you look at your mat, that's what you're looking for is the background, whether it's dark or white, to know whether it spoils, and then ciphering numbers over.
Yeah, I mean
symbols.
zero starts at the top, so just count down if you can't actually see the number.
Yeah, it's not like you have a lot of resources because
No.
there's only 4 resources in the game.
Right.
2 of them are food types. That's your meat and fruit. Then you got hides and tools.
Yep, that's it.
So it's busy. All right. That'll do it for us. And Sarah, talking about house rules, one thing that we had discussed, well, like you already said, putting in another technology tile or a technology card in there for 2 players doesn't seem like a bad start, especially since once someone buys the top one, the second one does add a bit of a cost already.
So there is an additional cost. So if you're playing with like 3 players, The first copy is free, and then the second copy I think costs 2 resources.
Well, it'll still cost anything that the study
Oh, yeah,
action
the
will
tile
cost, 'cause
itself.
some study ones will ask you for a cost.
Right.
So pay that, look at the card. And the first one, like you said, free, then it gets progressively more expensive. So you already have a balancing feature in
Right.
there. But another thing we talked about is, okay, let's say for 2 players, everyone can get all 5 technologies. Well, what if they do? What does that leave the study cards?
Right.
Because that's still a problem. And one thing that we thought of as a house rule is what happens if, when you go to the study card, you can then fulfill an art piece action.
Yes, because I think that's really the major problem is when the study tiles become useless, you need to have a backup action that thing does.
Right.
And doing, allowing you the opportunity, because again, it's not necessarily that you're going to be able to finish or contribute to an art piece, because those cost resources too. But at least it gives you that action so it's not a completely dead tile and it's not a completely dead path.
Yeah, and it's very noticeable in this game because the game thrives on, here are very desirable spots that everybody wants to go to, but is it worth bumping my fellow opponent so that they might have more actions before they get to a rest?
Right.
That sort of decision making is the bread and butter and what makes the game feel good. And when those tiles die, so does the game.
Exactly. And then it just drags from there.
Yeah.
So those are some options maybe to consider for house ruling to improve.
Yeah, punch up the game.
Yeah, punch up the game.
I think this game probably got a little bit rushed because it was
Yeah.
at the end of Tasty Minstrel's
Yeah.
publishing life. So maybe it didn't get the full treatment that it probably
Yeah,
could
it needed.
have gotten.
This game has a good basis. It just needed more development.
Right. All right. Why would you ever roll with just one when you can be
Rolling with 2.
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with 2. That's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.